Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
Well, here we are in beautiful Los Angeles, California with Adam Cole.
Yes, it's good to be here in beautiful Los Angeles, California.
What's the haps, Adam Cole?
Not too much. I'm enjoying this really nice weather considering it's January 2nd.
Yeah, really.
Back home it being freezing cold, so this isn't too bad. Getting to start off my new year with Pro Wrestling Guerrilla.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Is that an exciting thing? I mean, I would imagine, it's only, how many fans does PWG fit in the room?
Cram-packed at 400 people probably.
400 is crammed.
But packed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you guys, I mean, there's something special that's happened, especially I feel like in the last maybe 2 years, everybody else has kind of picked up on what's been going on out here with Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and now it's become kind of the spot.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. I think, too, because people have talked about before PWG having that really, really cool indie buzz of, it being the hot place to be. So people have already said, why doesn't PWG run pay-per-views? Why doesn't PWG try to get a TV deal? Or why doesn't PWG try to run a bigger building? Well, part of the magic is that building and it being so crammed and the YouTube previews and stuff. It's definitely the most fun I think I have wrestling for a company as far as, just enjoying wrestling for what it really is as far as independently. Yeah. So it's awesome, man.
And plus, there's something about it that's there's an integrity to it.
Yeah.
When they could, it's not a matter of trying to fit a bigger room. They're selling out every show within 10 minutes.
Minutes.
They could do more than they're doing.
For sure.
But they want to keep it to what the product is supposed to be.
Absolutely.
And that, I would imagine, has you guys all realizing that these fans expect, the absolute best that you can bring to the table.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because you'll sit there and you think objectively there really shouldn't be anything to be too nervous about for it being PWG because of how amazing and accepting and excited they are to see the guys do their thing. But the wrestlers care so much about doing so well that every single show we're we got to top last show. We have to make it better. It has to be more entertaining. It has to be more intense. So you get really worked up for these shows for sure.
Do you get nervous?
Definitely.
You do?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a good nervous now. Me nervous 3 years ago is a much different nervous than I am now. So it's more excitement than it is nerves, I think.
Right, because I guess 3 years ago you're still at this place where you're I don't know if I deserve to be here, and you're worried about everybody finding out that you don't deserve to be here. Now you're at a spot.
And the crazy thing was, I was the most self-conscious in my career when I was PWG World Champion and Ring of Honor World Champion, which right there screams oh, he's the man.
Right.
But I was still so young in my career. And I was
How old were you at that point?
23.
Right.
So
you're waiting for everybody to find out that they've just given you all this stuff and you don't deserve any of it.
Right, the belts were just a mask, and then when it gets taken off, they're going to find out how bad Adam Cole is. No, but it was that was really nerve-wracking for me at that time. So now, it's really cool to be at a point in my career now where, again, the nerves are still there. They'll always be there because I care about this a lot. But like I said, it's just a lot more excitement, kind of for where I stand.
When do you get to that spot when you realize that you do deserve to be where you're at, whether it's in Ring of Honor or PWG, mentally, when does that start to click?
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever come.
That you're still kind of worried about people finding out you're...
But I think, maybe not the finding out part, but I definitely, my vision of where I want to be and where I want to go in wrestling.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever attain it, but I think it's good. Because mentally, from where my standpoint is, always thinking about how I want to get better and I want to improve, and there's so many things I need to work on. I think that really keeps you on edge and kind of keeps you on your toes as far as always growing and getting better. So, there's never been a point ever where I've been behind the curtain or getting ready for a show and said, yeah, I'm the man in this locker room, or I'm the top dog. I always feel like I have something to prove. But that's I'm pretty sure, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure that's how a lot of guys in PWG and Ring of Honor feel. They're always trying to get better.
Yeah, and it's like we were saying, because the fans, no matter how good you are, they're always going to want a better performance. So when you're 23, well, what's the final vision that you're talking about, that kind of vision of you as a wrestler that you don't know if you'll ever achieve?
Oh gosh, I don't I would love to get to a point someday where I would if I can retire and say, yeah, I did everything I'd like to do in wrestling, that would be awesome.
Right.
But those goals obviously include a lot more tours of Japan, main eventing a WrestleMania, being a WWE champ. So I have a long way to go when it comes to that. But wrestling is so weird because it's so subjective and opinionated as far as what people like and what they enjoy. So, I don't know. I mean, I've gotten a lot more comfortable with enjoying the ride the older I've gotten.
Yeah.
Whereas before, when I was at that 23, years of age, I was so obsessive about making sure that I did good that I was still having fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I wasn't having fun, but I was almost so anxious and so worried all the time. Whereas now, I still have that same vision of wanting to grow and improve, but I am really having a good time now.
Well, I think we talked about that a couple years ago when we talked about you kind of locking into this vision of being the youngest this, the youngest that, the youngest this, and you realize that that's not the best route because, I was going to ask you, when you're 23 and you're the PWG champion and you're the Ring of Honor champion, like do you get to a point where you're like, wait, I'm only 23 years old, like there's got to be something more to accomplish. Like, do you lose those titles and be like, okay, where do we go from here?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because there was I had a conversation with Steve Corino the day after I won the Ring of Honor title because the night I won the championship, it was the biggest high I've ever felt and also the lowest low within hours, and I didn't understand it.
Right.
Like, after I accomplished it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like all I've ever dreamed of.
Right.
This feeling is so great. I'm so happy. And then I literally had a real thing which they call an adrenaline crash, which I didn't even know existed, where I felt sick to my stomach. My stomach was in knots. I couldn't sleep. I had like cold sweats. Mentally, I wasn't in a good place. And it was that like, now what? Now that I did this, now what am I going to do? And I asked Steve Corino about it the next day, and he said he went through the exact same thing when he won the ECW championship.
Of course.
So, yeah, it's pretty crazy, like kind of what you go through in those. And it's also interesting, too, it seems, with our fans, whether it be PWG or Ring of Honor, the level of respect they have for you almost after you drop the championship is different from when you are champion.
Right.
It's like that pressure is off of you while you're champion, but that it almost seems there's always a group of people, no matter what, whenever you lose it, that say that, oh, he should have had it a little bit longer.
Right.
So there's this different kind of respect that you get then afterwards, like post-championship.
And I think that, like, winning a championship is such a clear and obvious goal. Like, anybody can relate to, like, I'm a wrestler, I want to win the championship. But people don't really lock into this idea of, okay, what you really want is to be a champion that people actually respect. You know what I mean? That people actually look at as he's one of the good champions.
Exactly.
Because if you win the title and you've got it for a month and then you drop it, and people forget. It doesn't matter that you ever won it, really.
For sure. Exactly. Yeah, because there are two types of champions, exactly what you said. It's like when one guy becomes champion, that's the company's way of saying, all right, this is our guy.
Right.
And then it's a whole other ball game when the audience is saying, we want this to be our guy.
Right.
So it was like when I was champion at the time, people weren't upset about it by any means. I think they were happy with where it was going. But then after losing it, the strong opinion of wanting me to become champion again almost took me to another level, I feel. Like the best stuff of my career has definitely been post-double world championship run.
Yeah, and it also must be because it's one of these things where it's like, okay, you've won the Ring of Honor title. Okay, well, now he's going to move on to the next thing, and WWE is the next step. But it's like, no, he's staying here for a little while. Like, now you become the Ring of Honor people. He's our guy now.
Right.
So we want to see him continue to do well and to do well.
For sure. Yeah, they absolutely, I think, respect the fact that, for a company like Ring of Honor, because even though it's grown so much and it's a legitimate mainstream wrestling company now, it's on television, it runs traditional pay-per-views, guys are contracted like it's a serious mainstream company.
Yeah.
So, but even still, the diehard Ring of Honor fans still treat it as the little engine that could. Mm-hmm. So the guys who do stick around and stay around and fight for Ring of Honor, if you will say, they definitely show like a different amount of respect for those guys.
I was going to ask you about that because the more I thought about the partnership that Ring of Honor started with PWG and already has with New Japan, it kind of made me think more and more about Ring of Honor signing guys exclusively and how that may not be the most beneficial thing. It's definitely beneficial to Ring of Honor, but like industry-wide, it may not be the most beneficial thing in terms of people growing and like getting to wrestle in front of different crowds and like getting to wrestle a lot at a young place in their career. Do you think it's a good thing that Ring of Honor locks people down to contracts?
I do. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up though, because before I signed the contract, I really outweighed the pros and the cons.
Yeah.
And the number one con was exactly what you said. I thought, okay, I'm wrestling 2 or 3 times a weekend. That's no longer going to be happening. I'm going to be wrestling a lot less almost. Now, obviously, that's changed.
Right, but even if they match the money that you would have been making, it's still the experience of being in a ring and wrestling.
Of course.
That's the most valuable part.
Yeah, and up until I needed surgery was when I realized I made the right decision. Because when I got hurt and I tore my shoulder and my tricep and busted my elbow, and I sat at home for 5 months, and Ring of Honor took care of me the entire time because of this contract that I signed.
Right.
I realized looking after my body is almost more important than wrestling for every single independent company that I can,
right.
On the weekends. Because to Ring of Honor's credit also, I can do as many overseas bookings as I would like. It's just nothing within the United States or Canada. So I can go to Europe every weekend that Ring of Honor doesn't have a show, or I can go to Japan or Australia or wherever. It's just within the United States. So, but then at the same time, if I choose to sit at home and rest because I'm really sore from Final Battle last weekend, I can choose to do that also.
Right.
So it's really cool at this stage in my life to be able to say, I know that money's coming in no matter what.
Right.
So that to me is the number one thing that I'm able to sit back and go, okay, I know 100% these bills are going to be paid.
Right.
And I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
So that and I guess at the end of the day, that's kind of the most important thing.
And I guess there is this thing where you can be on the indies until you're, let's say, 30. You've probably put in 10 years of indies, and you might have 3-4 years left.
Right.
To be a WWE superstar, and then it's like, well,
for sure.
I'm kind of banged up from.
And then I think, let's say hypothetically, I don't re-sign an exclusive contract with Ring of Honor, and I don't go to WWE, and I'm just on the independents.
Sure.
That initial independent run, you do very well because for such a long time you were away from the independents, and you still wrestled on TV and pay-per-view for Ring of Honor, some stuff with New Japan and everything. So there's definitely perks to it.
I see. So like, there's actually stepping away for a year or two, or however many years it is.
Yeah.
Makes you more valuable.
I think so.
To one day do another tour of like, hey, guess who's back?
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
for
makes sense. It makes it. So you're now how old?
I'm 26.
You're 26. You get injured. You actually have to have surgery.
Yeah.
I would imagine before the surgery, in the years before the surgery, you kind of got this feeling of invincibility about
100%.
you. Right.
Yeah.
And then you go in, and most 26-year-olds even are able to maintain that because they don't even have to have surgery as young as you did. How did that impact you? Because the last time I talked to you was before the surgery.
Yeah.
So, and as soon as I read that you were getting surgery, I was like, oh, man.
Yeah.
Because that's one of those things that can slow down people, just mentally, not even physically, just mentally. Having to sit out and get surgery can completely put the brakes on someone.
2015 was definitely the biggest roller coaster of a year for me, like both, professionally, personally. It was like I got my surgery right as my grandmother passed away, and she was like my mother. Like she was the one who got me into wrestling when I was 9 and raised me since I was little.
And so part of your wrestling career is because she gets to watch it.
Right, of course. Like her watching it on TV and stuff. Like a lot of people out. Like this tattoo was my grandmother loved phoenixes, so when she passed, I got this tattoo for her. So it was like, but not being able to get out any anger or sadness or anything like that through wrestling, and just having to sit at home that she passed away, and then I couldn't even watch wrestling because it made me sad because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But like the mental challenge was far worse than the physical therapy. Like the physical therapy like 3 times a day was tough, but the mental part, like I said, I really realized how like not well-rounded of a human being I was when I got surgery, because it was like, I have nothing, wrestling's it. So
well, I have time for my hobbies now. Yeah, you don't have any hobbies.
Right, exactly. So, but it was good because it made me it totally reinvigorated me and made me like really, really appreciate my job and really look forward to coming back. And so just getting to come back was great. But even like the actual comeback match, I don't know if I told you this, but like when I was rehabbing, I had a really big mishap with my shoulder where it really swelled up really bad and it was hurt. And they were like, yeah, you have to like not do any physical therapy. Just like let it rest.
So you just have to sit.
Yeah, you just have to sit. And this is when I was supposed to wrestle AJ Styles at War of the Worlds. So Ring of Honor had to announce it as a mystery opponent because they didn't know if I was going to be able to make it.
Right.
I got the clearance from my doctor that I could wrestle AJ that Monday the next day on Tuesday, I wrestled AJ. I hadn't been in a ring for 5 months.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, nothing. Like, it was just me doing rehab stuff, and then I ended up being here. And I was already depressed because I wasn't working out or wrestling. So I'm sitting at home thinking, I'm not going to get cleared. What the heck's... And then I find out I got cleared. And then I wrestled AJ after not being in a ring for 5 months. You can imagine how nervous.
And you're sitting there, I would think, just being worried about, like, oh, I got injured. Now I know I can get injured.
Yes.
Like, I got to be extra sensitive with my arm, with my shoulder, with my elbow, with everything.
Oh, I used to, too. Like, I used to never really warm up properly. Like, I'd get to the building and wear these and I'd be up in, 30 minutes, and then I'd get changed to go out and have my match. Now I have, like, this 45-minute routine.
You're watching these guys, like, stretch, be like, guys... Can we not take ourselves so seriously?
Right.
Like, let's relax.
Exactly. And now I'm the guy on the foam roller, doing yoga before the match.
You're in the RV, like, splits on the chairs before.
Yeah. But it's good because it wasn't like – I'm lucky that it was only an injury that prevented me to, not wrestle for 4 months.
Yeah.
It wasn't something super crazy, knock on wood. But, yeah, like I said, it just really made me appreciate my job.
And did you go through any of that sort of mentally being comfortable with using your body the way you used to?
No, actually. The only weird part for me was the first 5 minutes of me against AJ Styles in Philly, where I felt like running the ropes felt different.
Right, because you hadn't done it.
And I was like, oh, man, I haven't done this. And then it was like the second I took my first nice bump, then I was like, I'm back, and the crowd was into it and stuff.
You survived it, and it's like, I can do this.
Because I generally speaking, I've always been fairly like cautious of the way I go about certain things as far as super high risks. When it's called for, I 100% do it, and I've done thumbtacks with Jay Briscoe and all this wacky stuff. But I've always been fairly careful about like stuff that could really hurt me. The shoulder injury was just a freak accident.
How do you be careful? Because that just reminds me. I think it was the last time I saw you wrestle live.
Okay.
It was the Jay Briscoe match.
Yeah.
And like the big spot for that was I think he filled your mouth with thumbtacks. And
I filled his mouth.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? Carefully.
Yeah, well, fortunately for me, Jay Briscoe is just a savage.
You kicked him in the face after you filled his mouth with legit thumbtacks.
Right.
Yeah.
The saddest part I was about that match was the story arc of where we were going with the me and Jay Briscoe feud. It was an 18-month build.
Right.
And the Briscoes' parents always come to the events.
Right.
So 2 weeks prior, I attacked Jay Briscoe's dad, and they're not in the front row, and I had reserved signs for his parents. And very early in the match, I staple gunned the reserve for Mr. Briscoe sign to his forehead, and people kind of brush over that because the thumbtacks thing is so crazy. But that's the part where I was like, oh, man, that was my favorite part.
Because that's the violence. There's some poetic.
And it's just, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, exactly. Like some matches like that, you just kind of have to lay it all on the line. It was Final Battle. That's Ring of Honor's WrestleMania.
Right.
And that was a feud that was 18 months in the making.
Right.
So, of course, some danger is going to be involved because, like they say, wrestling's not ballet.
Right. So what's more nerve-wracking for you when you go into that match knowing that, like, it's a hardcore match? Ring of Honor doesn't do hardcore matches. Yeah. You're in with Jay Briscoe, who's like, people are expecting a lot. Or, you're back from surgery and it's a few months later, but you got Nakamura, who's, like, known for just kicking people's asses. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't need weapons.
Right.
He hits people as hard as he possibly can.
Right. Definitely more nervous for the Nakamura match, but for a different reason probably than you're thinking.
Right.
Like, to me, anytime a match involves weapons, they're very violent, and physically it definitely hurts. But generally that the audience is going to be into it, and they're going to get invested. And when you fall through a table or you fall in thumbtacks, or you get hit with a chair, they're going to react. Yeah. When you're just going to a straight-up wrestling war with a guy, you really have to deliver physically and really be your timing with the guy has to be perfect. So, like, definitely like a match like wrestling a guy like Nakamura, who the audience just absolutely adores.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the thought being, if they don't like it, who's it on? It's definitely on me.
Right.
So it's something like that is what I'd be more nervous for.
Is there any special, like, do you have to get with Nakamura before that to make sure that you're just on the same page, or are you both experienced enough to know that once you get in
generally speaking, because of the language barrier, there's not much talking being done before. You just kind of feel each other out because pro wrestling is a universal language.
Right.
So there's not too much discussion, which almost kind of makes it less nerve-wracking.
Really?
You have less to remember, at
right,
least to me.
Right.
Like, when sometimes when you have matches, especially television, where stuff needs to be, this, but then when you're wrestling a guy like Nakamura, you kind of go out and base it on feel.
Yeah, because that seems terrifying to me, who's never wrestled a match.
Right.
To have an opponent. It's like you're not whispering stuff in your ears. You're not talking about it beforehand. And to just go out there and be like, no, do you watch a bunch of Nakamura before, or do you just know?
Definitely. Yeah, like I love New Japan, so I watch a lot of Tanahashi and Okada and Nakamura and all that stuff. But I think definitely I had to study and see what he did to see how, Adam Cole would play off of Nakamura, just to generalize it kind of.
Did you see Raw this week?
I did not catch Raw this week, and I really wish I did.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Because I was there, Kathy Kelly is here with me, filming this and everything, and we were there together. And Heath Slater, he goes in the ring, and he's on Miz TV, and he goes, Heath Slater, baby! And Kathy, whispers immediately and goes, he just said baby. She was like, that's Adam Cole's thing. I was like, no, I heard it.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about this?
Oh, I got more tweets about something than I ever have in my life than when Heath Slater did that. So that, to me, I think it's pretty cool that people have associated a simple word like baby,
especially in the wrestling world.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
but said baby, that being my thing. So yeah, it's cool. The Adam Cole baby. It's funny because when I first started doing it. Mm-hmm. I first started doing that in CZW as a bad guy, and no one, of course, some people would boo, but then people started saying it with me. Now people do the arms and the fingers with it.
Yeah.
They're just randomly yelling it throughout shows.
Yeah.
So it's hilarious that me saying my name and then Bebe at the end really, really took off. It's awesome. It's so,
you got shirts, T-shirts, you got everything, yeah.
The whole nine.
Is it difficult for you to continuously, because I think about this with people like you and like Kevin Steen, that you guys, for the most part, tend to be heels.
Right.
But you're like two of the most well-liked guys by wrestling fans. Like, do you have to continuously figure out, okay, how do I turn this around? Because they're saying Bebe.
Right.
So how do I turn this around to be a heel again? I got to figure out how to be a bad guy. Like, is that difficult to get boos?
Yeah. For sure, especially at this stage. Like, for me, it felt a lot easier when we were talking about me being double champion. Because at that point, people are like, oh, he has too much. Give someone else a shot. So that was very easy to get heat for me.
Right.
But now I'm at a point where it's definitely more challenging. But I've kind of come to terms with the fact also of, accepting. I used to obsess on if I'd walk through the curtain and they would all cheer, I would go, ugh, and I'd be frustrated. I've accepted the fact now that if they're excited to see me, let them be excited to see me, but I'll get them to kind of change their pace throughout the match.
Right.
So I focus more on, and especially too, with Ring of Honor, if I'm wrestling some guys who are newer, or maybe in the mid-card, I know that generally the audience will probably go with me, but if I know that if I'm wrestling Kyle O'Reilly at Final Battle, they're going to be for Kyle O'Reilly.
Right.
So I kind of let things happen more organically now, but I'm definitely brainstorming. It's funny that you brought up the Bebe thing, because I'm already brainstorming ideas to get them to kind of turn on me with that thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see. Because that's just, everyone wants to do it.
Yeah, it's just too, when you figure out how to say something that's fun.
Yeah, right.
It's like regardless of if it's good guys or bad guys, people are going to want to just keep doing it and doing it and doing it.
Yep, exactly.
What do you talking about, I think one way that you kind of were able to be a bad guy when you got back to Ring of Honor was to do the Kingdom thing.
Absolutely.
And have Mike Bennett and Maria and all that. How did you feel about being a member of a stable at that point as opposed to, your own dude?
Yeah, I think it was very much needed for my character, and I think it was needed for our group too, because I'm very close personal friends with all three of them. They checked on me every single day to see how I was feeling. But I think initially, we all kind of knew that me first coming back, if I was going to be a solo act, forget trying to be a heel.
Right.
They were just so ready to accept me back. But then at the same time, we didn't want what we ran into early, which was me coming back and joining the Kingdom and them booing them but cheering for me a lot.
Right.
So then we did this whole intertwined story where it looked like I was going to leave them and I was ready to move on, and then I ended up turning my back on Kyle O'Reilly, and I'm still with the Kingdom.
Right.
So then they started hating me. So we just kind of embraced the first 2 or 3 months of the tension within the Kingdom to later eventually build to we are the Kingdom and we rouged you guys the whole time.
Does it ever make you worried about leaving Ring of Honor? Because that story, and that's what Ring of Honor does, they kind of really think long term, it seems like, with the stories. And this is a 3-month build, and we're going to stay the course, and this is where it goes, and it usually works. does it make you nervous that one day you won't be in Ring of Honor and you'll be at a place, whether it's WWE, whether it's another organization, that's like, okay, here's what we're going to do with your character, and then 4 days later, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And you're like, that build isn't quite there anymore.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, the nerves for something like that is pretty obvious. I think that would kind of not be preferred as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, the way Ring of Honor builds stories and commits to certain characters is awesome, and it's so easy to follow for the fans. That's why some guys really, really get over and some guys are really hated because they're so smart about that. However, I have worked for, and I know that, say, for example, like WWE is not like these smaller independent shows, but I've definitely been in a lot of scenarios where stuff is planned and stuff gets changed, whether it be a week before, a day before, or an hour before.
Right.
That's just part of wrestling. So I think I'd be prepared with that. Creatively, would it be frustrating? Maybe, but it's all circumstantial.
And your job is to make it work.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, but their job is to create the outline for the painting, and we're going to paint it in with the best colors that we can to make it work.
Right.
So that's our job. We're not the bookers, or we're not the producers, or we're not creative. Our job is to do what they tell us to do and add our own spice to it, but make it work for them so they go, okay, this is exactly where I want the story to go.
What do you think? Do you like what PWG does, which not like Ring of Honor doesn't? I think Ring of Honor takes itself a little more seriously and is trying to maintain that suspension of disbelief. I was talking to Kathy about it earlier. I feel like the moments that WWE and Ring of Honor is the same way. The moments that they look for are those moments that you forget what you're watching as a show. Whereas a group like PWG seems like it's just more wanting to get you wrapped up in all the fun, and we all know it's a show, and let's go out there and just make you say, oh my God.
Right.
Do you have any preference as to how the stories are told or how wrestling is done? Because they're starkly different.
Yeah.
And I feel like the way PWG does stuff, 20 years ago, say, would be looked at as sacrilege.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are advantages to both, for sure. The coolest thing about PWG is if someone has never watched wrestling before or they're thinking about giving it a shot, and I show them a YouTube preview of PWG, and they see all these crazy moves and this audience just losing their minds. They're like, oh, this is pro wrestling? Oh, this is awesome.
Right.
Just because it's so cool. But short term, that really attracts them. For me, I love that slow TV build, small character arcs that really eventually build to this big cool
because we're
thing.
Wrestling nerds.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Something where it's if a character slowly leans over and picks up the title and hits the guy with the belt the same way he hit him with the belt 8 months ago when he turned on him. It's I love stuff like that, and the announcer, calling it out. But I definitely prefer wrestling to be really promo heavy with good promo guys, but the matches need to deliver just as much as the talking does. Yeah. So
But for this short attention span world, PWG just comes in like a cannon. Yeah.
PWG's like the Vine of pro wrestling.
Yeah, it is, and it works, and obviously it's working really well. Does
Yeah.
it change you when you're out there, when you're in the ring? And you look out and there's Sofia Vergara or some celebrity is out there.
Ronda Rousey.
Right.
It's
Or
ridiculous.
Gillian Jacobs from Community has gone to shows. Does it change the way, does that click in, or do you just have to ignore the individuals and look at the fans as a group?
I normally don't ever pick out anybody in particular. It's normally just that whole crowd is just, an energy of one.
Right.
But there is that 9-year-old kid in me that kind of feels like I'm showing off too. For them. I'm like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah.
But that's just such a fun part again about PWG. You never know who's going to be there.
Right.
You just never know.
And does everybody have to come together and kind of figure out what everybody's doing? Because there's so much crazy stuff being thrown into every match that the risk of getting repetitive is high.
Sure.
Does everybody have to get together and figure out how do we make this show work, not just each match
You
work?
would think that would be done.
Yeah.
But really, that's not done very much. It's everyone kind of does their, for Ring of Honor, for example, you have to constantly worry about the cameras, the time cues, not repeating anything, not wearing the same colors as another guy.
Right.
PWG is just the all-stars of the independents.
Gotcha.
And the guys know what the guys do. For example, I'm not going to randomly do a shooting star press tonight, knowing that, Speedball Mike Bailey does one or whatever. Everyone kind of has their thing, and it's cool because the crowd accepts the guys for who they are. So even if there are 3 moonsaults to the outside. But if all 3 guys do moonsaults to the outside, the PWG crowd will love it just as much.
Right.
So because they're so appreciative and they just love wrestling so
And I
much.
guess that's also up to the people that are making the matches at PWG,
Right.
to know what everybody does, and
Exactly.
and just to trust
And
that everybody's
I
going to do
think
what
too,
they do.
when people go and they watch PWG, they're expecting like that car crash fireworks type of show. If
Right.
you like that kind of wrestling, PWG's perfect.
Right.
And it's fun. It's fun for everybody.
Right.
The character stuff I do. Anytime I want to try anything, I always give it a shot at PWG, because my thought is if it doesn't get a reaction at PWG, it most certainly will not get one at Ring of Honor. So I always try stuff and figure stuff out here, because this crowd's they're the best. They're awesome.
At this point, do you have any sort of, this is where I see myself in a year, this is where I see myself in 5 years, or have you kind of gotten past that?
No, I think definitely now that I'm back from injury, completely back in full force, I would love to get some serious tours of New Japan in this year. That would be like my number one goal.
Does that bum you out that like this is happening the same weekend as Wrestle Kingdom?
Right.
That
Right.
You're at PWG's first show of the year, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yep.
But
Yep.
then on the other end of the world, Wrestle Kingdom,
especially too, considering there's been like me and New Japan have almost made it work so many times. There's been circumstances on my end and then circumstances on theirs. But certainly, Ring of Honor is hosting some shows in Japan in February, and I can tell you I will be back. So it's finally going to work out. But yeah, super bummed. The Tokyo Dome, like you said, I'm happy I'm at PWG, but
that's
40,000 plus at the Tokyo Dome for Wrestle Kingdom would have been pretty awesome.
It's one of those first world problems where you're like, these have to happen on the same weekend.
Right. That's definitely a bucket list thing.
Yeah.
For sure. To be able to do Wrestle Kingdom. That's the second biggest wrestling show of the year.
Right.
For sure, next to WrestleMania.
Right. So that's really where your head's at right now. You just got all your goals, which is I want to headline Tokyo Dome, I want to headline Wrestle Kingdom, and I want to headline WrestleMania, and I want to keep doing all the Ring of Honor shows.
All of it. And be the youngest Hall of Fame induction of all.
And keep wrestling, by the way.
Just everything. That. Yeah, and then just never be happy.
Be in the Hall of Fame when I'm 35, and then go for that world title at 40, because I can still do it.
Really arrogant goals.
Yeah. Well, you're just setting yourself up for a lifetime of those
disappointment.
Yeah, of those crashes that you were talking
thanks.
about.
This is when you're supposed to say, no, I know you're going to do all those
I don't think
things.
you'll do all
Not
of them. No, I don't think they'll all get done. It's impossible. And even if they did, it would just be like you'd get them all done, and then you realize they were all done, and just be depressed anyway.
I know, and be
There's
so
no
sad.
Getting happy.
Well, that's what someone had said to me. Like they're like, yeah, if you main event like one WrestleMania,
right?
Then you'd be like, oh, I'm set. And I go, no, you wouldn't.
Absolutely
you go,
not.
No, I need to do next year.
Right.
And then the next, because you want to be like, then you want to be a franchise guy.
Right.
Like a Cena or an Austin.
If you main event WrestleMania and you do a good job at it, and you're 57 years old, then you'll be satisfied.
I totally agree.
But you
totally
got a long way to go
I
before
do.
you're 57, and that's that's like 30 years of being unhappy because you haven't gotten to WrestleMania.
Oh man, I'll be
yet.
so good by 57 though.
be the dopest 57-year-old wrestler in the world. Well, Adam Cole, it's always a pleasure talking to you, dude.
Yes, always a pleasure.
Good luck tonight. I can't wait. It's my first time I'm seeing PWG live tonight.
I promise that you're gonna have the time of your life.
Yeah.
It's something so different than anything you've ever experienced before. It's like a rock concert roller coaster ride. You're not gonna go to bed till 5 a.m.
That's amazing.
I'll be so pumped.
Awesome. Well, excellent. Good luck with everything.
Thanks,
and,
man.
It's good talking to you, dude.
All right. Good to talk to you too.
Hey, it's Sam Roberts. I hope you enjoyed that wrestling interview from Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. You can go to notsam.com to subscribe to that podcast. But I upload videos like that on this YouTube channel all the time. So if you don't already subscribe now. It's on the side of the page. I made it real easy. Click the button. Subscribe to the page. Subscribe to the page.